Hey everybody, Miss Erin here. So yesterday we read the second chapter of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone by JK Rowling. And so we will continue with chapter 3 today. If you missed chapter 2, it's up on our YouTube page. I will show you the awesome illustrations as they come up so we can get started. So chapter 3 is called Letters from No One. Let's get started. The escape of the Brazilian boa constrictor earned Harry his longest ever punishment. By the time he was allowed out of the cupboard again, the summer holidays had already started and Dudley had already broken his new Cinecamera, crashed his remote control aeroplane, and for the first time on his racing bike, he knocked down old Mrs. Fig as she crossed Privet Drive on her crutches. Harry was glad school was over, but there was no escaping Dudley's gang, who visited the house every single day. Pierce, Dennis, Malcolm, and Gordon were all very big and stupid, but as Dudley was the biggest and the stupidest of the lot, he was the leader. The rest of them were all quite happy to join in Dudley's favorite sport, Harry hunting. This is why Harry spent so much time, as much as possible, out of the house, wandering around and thinking about the end of the holidays, where he would see a tiny ray of hope. When September came, he would be going off to secondary school, and for the first time in his life, he wouldn't be with Dudley. Dudley had a place at Uncle Vernon's old school, Smeltings. Pierce Polkus was going there too. Harry, on the other hand, was going to Stonewall High, the local comprehensive. Dudley thought this was very funny. They stuffed people's heads down the toilet on the first day at Stonewall, he told Harry. You want to come upstairs and practice? No thanks, said Harry. The poor toilet's never had anything as horrible as your head down it. It might get sick. Then he ran away before Dudley could work out what he had said. One day in July, Aunt Petunia took Dudley to London to buy his Smeltings uniform, leaving Harry at Mrs. Fig's. Mrs. Fig wasn't as bad as usual. It turned out she had broken her leg tripping over one of the cats, and she didn't seem quite as fond of them as before. She let Harry watch television and gave him a bit of chocolate cake that tasted as though she had had it for several years. That evening, Dudley paraded around the living room for family in his brand new uniform. Smelting's boys wore maroon tailcoats, orange knickerbockers, and flat straw hats called boaters. They also carried knobbly sticks used for hitting each other while the teachers weren't looking. This was supposed to be good training for later in life. As he looked at Dudley in his new knickerbockers, Uncle Vernon said gruffly that it was the proudest moment of his life. Aunt Petunia burst into tears and said she couldn't believe it. Her little ickle Duddykins looked so handsome and grown up. Harry didn't trust himself to speak. He thought 2 ribs of his might have already cracked from trying not to laugh. There was a horrible smell in the kitchen the next morning when Harry went in for breakfast. It seemed to be coming from a large metal tub in the sink. He went to have a look. The tub was full of what looked like dirty rags swimming in gray water. What's that? He asked Aunt Petunia. Her lips tightened, as they always did when he dared ask a question. Your new uniform, she said. Harry looked down in the bowl again. Oh, I didn't realize it was supposed to be so wet. Don't be stupid, snapped Aunt Petunia. I'm dyeing some of Dudley's old things gray for you. It'll look like everybody else's when I've finished. Harry seriously doubted this, but thought it best not to argue. He sat down at the table and tried not to think about how he was going to look on his first day at Stonewall High. Like wearing old bits of elephant skin, probably. Dudley and Uncle Vernon came in, both with wrinkled noses because of the smell from Harry's uniform. Uncle Vernon opened his newspaper as usual, and Dudley banged his smelting stick, which he carried everywhere on the table. They heard the click of the letter box and the flop of letters on the doormat. Get the post, said Uncle Vernon behind his newspaper. Make Harry get it. Get the post, Harry. Make Dudley get it. Poke him with your smelting stick, Dudley. Harry dodged the smelting stick and went to get the post. 3 things laid on the doormat. A postcard from Uncle Vernon's sister Marge, who was on holiday in the Isle of Wight, a brown envelope that looked like a bill, and a letter for Harry. Harry picked it up and stared at it, his heart twanging like a giant elastic band. No one ever, not in his whole life, had ever written to him. Who would? He had no friends, no other relatives, and he didn't belong to a library, so he never got rude notes asking for the books back. Yet, here it was, a letter addressed so plainly there could be no mistake. Mr. H. Potter, the cupboard under the stairs, 4 Privet Drive, Litter Winning, Surrey. The envelope was thick and heavy and made of yellowish parchment, and the address was written in emerald green ink. There was no stamp. Turning the envelope over, his hand was trembling. Harry saw a purple wax seal bearing a coat of arms, a lion, an eagle, a badger, and a snake, surrounding a large letter H. "Hurry up, boy," shouted Vernon from the kitchen. "What are you doing, checking for letter bombs?" He chuckled at his own joke. Harry went back to the kitchen, still staring at his letter. He handed Uncle Vernon the bill and the postcard, and then sat down and slowly began to open the yellow envelope. Uncle Vernon ripped open the bill and snorted in disgust and flipped over the postcard. "Marge is ill," he informed Petunia. "Ate a funny whelk." "Dad," said Dudley suddenly. "Dad, Harry's got something." Harry was on the point of unfolding his letter, which was written on the very same heavy parchment as the envelope, when it was jerked sharply out of his hand by Uncle Vernon. "That's mine," said Harry, trying to snatch it back. "Who would be writing you?" sneered Uncle Vernon, shaking the letter open with one hand and glancing at it. His face went from red to green faster than a set of traffic lights, and it didn't stop there. Within seconds, it was grayish white, like old porridge. "Petunia!" he gasped. Dudley tried to grab a hold of the letter to read it, but Uncle Vernon held it high out of his reach. Aunt Petunia took it curiously and read the first line. For a moment, it looked as though she might faint. She clutched her throat and made a choking noise. "Vernon! Oh my goodness, Vernon!" They stared at each other, seeming to have forgotten that Harry and Dudley were still in the room. Dudley wasn't used to being ignored. He gave his father a sharp tap on the head with his smelting sticks. "I want to read the letter," he said loudly. I want to read it," said Harry furiously, "as it's mine." "Get out, both of you," croaked Uncle Vernon, stuffing the letter back inside the envelope. We'll stop there and continue.